Welcome, my friends, where teaching with Mickey can be fun. Today's lesson, where you might just end up losing your head, decapitation. Ah, yes, decapitation. An honorable ending. Much nicer than hanging. There's none of that seemingly flailing about. Not to mention, well, voiding. You know, really. Hanging is suitable only for the lower classes, whereas beheaded is a death fit for a king. All the best families had decapitations. Due to the involvement of the nobility, a very rigid etiquette was developed for beheadings. It's really too bad when people forget their manners, don't you think? Take Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. Henry VIII, that old Tudor, decided to cut off her head. And even though everything was done just as it should be, she simply refused to behave. She wouldn't put her head on the block. And she ran about, and finally they just hacked her to bits. On the run. As it were, of course, she had a head start. The great argument was which was better, the sword or the axe. Now the most distinguished always chose the sword, and Boleyn, being Queen of England at the time, got to pick her own executioner, and she chose a master swordsman from France. But as usual, it was the French who ruined everything. In 1792, they invented the guillotine, and that was simply the end of beheading as a distinguished method of death. It wasn't even Dr. Guillotine's invention. He was just the one who urged the National Assembly to find a merciful way to execute all classes of people. The revolution made everything democratic, including death. King Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, all the cake-eating nobility of France lost their heads over the new execution machine. 2,498 people were guillotined during the French Revolution, and obviously they couldn't all be quality. They were thieves, robbers, common criminals, and even now no one's really sure that it was a human death. Scientists have performed all sorts of experiments to see whether the severed head still thinks or feels. My favorite story is that Dr. Guillotine himself ended up being guillotined. Unfortunately, it turns out that he died in his bed in 1814. And it's too bad, because otherwise, you could have said that he should have quit while he was... well, you know. Anyways, my friends, that concludes today's lesson in decapitation. Hello there, students! Welcome to another educational video for the curious and sadistic, where teaching with Mickey can be fun. You're all going to die. Anyways, I hope we brought our nooses for today's class, because today's lesson is about hanging. So as I hop up on this chair, wobble wobble, and get this noose nice and snugly around my neck, let's talk about the vast history of hanging. You see, hanging was literally the first execution in America in 1630, as with it being the last public execution in 1937, an event that was held in Owensboro, Kentucky. Around 20,000 people who turned up for that event. VidCon, TanaCon, surely Horror Show Con will definitely be the place worth hanging out. Now if you look here, I'll show you something. When a man gets strangled, the rope goes straight around the neck. It leaves a mark like this. But when you hang a man, the rope jerks the knot upward and the rope burn looks like this. It's not easy hanging someone properly. You've got to place the knot behind the left ear, just so. In a good hanging, the neck breaks and the spinal cord is crushed and the fellow dies instantly. Oh, but so much can go wrong. You've got to have at least 6 feet drop or the neck won't break. Or if the rope is too short, the neck won't break, and it could take them 15 minutes to choke to death when that happens. Take the hanging of Black Jack Ketchum in 1901 for example. The rope was too long and she ripped alright, ripping Black Jack's head clean off. Now, even with a clean hanging, they'll thrash around for a few minutes, and God, the smell. Variety of spasms and release, you know. how they urinate and defecate everything all at once. I don't know why anyone would want to be hanged, but Karl Panzern did. After his conviction for murder in 1929, he wrote a letter to President Hoover and insisted that he had the constitutional right to be hung. And it was on September 5th, 1930, he exercised that right. Nowadays, only Washington and Montana use hanging for execution. And they even give you the option of lethal injection. Well, students, that concludes today's lesson in hanging. If you like, you're free to hang around and have a swinging good time with me. Good morning, class. I do hope you're all well and rested and fully prepared for one hell of a chorus. Now, if you could be so kind as to stand up or sit down and put on a blindfold. Well, guess what? For today's class, you could smoke if you want. Also, extra credit to whoever give the most moving and convincing final words. Now, I know that we're not permitted to have any weapons during class. Sadly, it's frowned upon. However, for today's lesson, I think there can be an exception. Remember, my friends, we are now in my world. Thus, it is my rules. Here we have an M16 rifle. Lightweight, air-cooled, gas-operated, magazine-fed, shoulder or hip-fired weapon designed for either automatic fire 3-round bursts or semi-automatic fire single shot through the use of a selector lever. The weapon has a fully adjustable rear sight. The upper receiver barrel assembly has a fully adjustable rear sight and a compensator which helps keep the muzzle down during firing. The steel bolt group and barrel extensions are designed with locking lugs, which lock the bolt group to the barrel extension, allowing the rifle to have a lightweight aluminum receiver. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My rifle is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it, as I must master my life. Without me, my rifle is useless. Without my rifle, I am useless. I must fire my rifle true. I must shoot straighter than my enemy, who is trying to kill me. I must shoot him before he shoots me. I will. It's okay, class. Death by firing squad. I know we're not in Idaho and Utah, but like I said, this is my world. So don't mind me as I start putting these rounds into the magazine. You know, death by firing squad, it's not like what you see in the movies. They strap you to a chair, they blindfold you, and ask you if you have any last words. Like they would care. Oh, but of course I care. I hope you got something good. Anyone who makes me shed a tear gets a headshot, like they do in other countries, just to make sure the job's done. But we don't want that now, do we? We want the full experience. So after muttering some insolent noise, what they do is pin a paper target right over your heart, and 5 riflemen are standing 20 feet away, ready to bring an end to your miserable life. Now what's funny about this is that 4 of them rifles have live rounds, and only 1 of them is a blank. Now the reasons for this is because the mind doctor says it helps our executioners go to sleep at night, thinking it was them who fired the blank. But trust me, if it was me, I would be sound asleep knowing that I was the one who put you down. But it's not cruelty. Supposedly it's to be a quick death if all 4 bullets go through your heart. If not, well, we don't want what happened in 1951 when some poor guy ended up bleeding to death when all 4 shots never hit the heart. Yeah, the firing squad is big for spies like Mata Hari, and Joe Hill, the guy who got framed for murder, and especially Gary Gilmore. Everybody knows about Gary Gilmore. Guy gets paroled out of the pen in Illinois in April, and it wasn't until July when he was committing crimes again. Too bad he did them in Utah. Gary Gilmore. the first person they executed after the Supreme Court let capital punishment back in 1976. Well, class, I guess that will conclude today's lesson. Until next time, I'm just gonna smoke me a cigarette. I hope a little Kentucky windage can get me a couple heart shots. Please, feel free for any last words in the comment section below. Good morning, class, or good evening, or whatever time it is. So, today, my friends, I get to take a break from playing host to a collection of horror stories and play the role as teacher. That's right, your friend Mickey is going to introduce you to the wonderful world of murder, madness, and death. In today's lesson, well, I think there's no better way to start off my first class than enjoying the brief and shocking history of Old Sparky. So let me just take a seat right here, get these straps on, make sure this headpiece is on right, and also hopefully the switch is accessible for my critics, and show you the wonderful history and features of my throne in hell, death by electrocution. Now, it should be no surprise that death by electrocution is considered as the most popular form of execution in the United States. Oh yes, death by electricity is the one method of execution that has given the most lives at front row seat roller coaster rides straight to the other side. You see, during a time when many of us were enjoying our popcorn moments when seeing some miserable wrongdoing soul hanging on the news, I guess enough people started to feel bad for enjoying those moments, kind of realizing how our love for executions makes us no different than the murderers themselves, which is why people started coming up with ideas of finding a more humane way of sending those murderers and monsters to the other side. And that is where Old Sparky came in. And well, even though the electric chair proved to be an effective method of execution, death by electricity didn't have quite a decent start when this method of execution began losing its favoritism, when too many people kind of left this world in a way that was worse than hanging. But don't worry, my friends, even though most of America refuses to use the electric chair because of its grisly reputation, there are about 5 or 6 states in the east side of America where you can still enjoy this electrifying experience. So, I bet you didn't know that the first to feel the experience of the electrifying chair wasn't human. Oh no, long before the chair was introduced, the idea of killing people through electricity was first tested on animals. That's right, cats, dogs, cows, and horses. Thanks to them giving their lives for our need for justice, real progress was made. Originally, the first human who was supposed to enjoy this ride was a murderer named Joseph Chapleau, but somehow he managed to have his punishment changed to life imprisonment, and spend his remaining years in prison luxury. Now, the man who would be the first to go by electricity was a man named William Kimler, a miserable soul who murdered his wife with a hatchet, and, well, you could say that Henry's execution wasn't what you would call a successful trial. Already, death by electricity was facing its common problem, botches and malfunctions, which is why it took 4 minutes before Mr. Kimler was finally dead, and well done. Imagine a 4-minute horror show for a private audience. And after working out a few bugs, all kinds of popular faces found themselves being executed by electricity, like Giuseppe Zangara, the guy who tried assassinating President Roosevelt, those Soviet spies known as Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and of course the ever-so-charming Ted Bundy. Now, I bet you're all curious. What's it like being in an electric chair? Well, overall the chair is naturally made of solid oak, with thick leather straps on the arms, the legs, and the back, and a metal electrode on one leg, and a metal cap to conduct electricity. So before electrocuting you, the first thing they do is shave your head. Reasons why they would do this is to make the electricity more conductive. By not doing this, well, not only will the electrocution take longer, but your hair will find itself catching on fire. Basically, you'll be giving a small audience quite the talent show before dying. Also, before you're seated and strapped in, they'll make sure your leg is touching the electrode. And sometimes they may put a sponge of brine water on your shaved head before fitting the metal headpiece. They do this as a way to make the electricity more effective, more like an instant kill rather than risking the possibility of wasting 15 minutes frying you until you're finally dead. So after the cap is fit snugly onto your head and a leather strap is tied around your eyes just to keep your eyes from popping out, which is common, that's when the executioner will throw the switch. Now the first charge will be about 2500 volts going straight into your brain, causing it to fry and boil inside that head of yours. This is the one jolt that causes your head to spark and smoke. The second charge of 1000 volts disrupts the electrical circuit in your heart, causing it to stop beating. And usually there's a third and fourth charge just to make sure the job is done. After that, a doctor will check to make sure you're dead. And if everything went okay, your scalp and legs should be charred black. And after the autopsy, your body will be sent to the next of kin. But unfortunately, there are still problems when using the electric chair, which is why most people would see it as an inhumane method of execution. Like there are executions where the person isn't killed by the first few jolts, and the whole process has to be repeated again. And we can never forget the incident in 1989 when a man's head caught on fire. Thankfully, they were able to put a metal bit in his mouth to keep him from screaming. So this concludes my brief class of death by electricity. Now, I know that there are plenty other interesting details and stories that many of us know, so please, by all means, feel free to share them in the comment section below. Good morning, class. Or is it afternoon? Evening? As if it really matters. You know, my friends, I know that drugs, cannibalism, porn, and violent video games is frowned upon in today's world. But stalking, now that's bad. If you can't say no to drugs, let's hope you can say no to stalking. Much like this fellow I see lurking about. For 3 years now, he's been following me because of this unhealthy fixation. A devoted fan, an avid watcher, very persistent with seeing his opinions being facts when expressing his disapproval of my horror show. Never fails on any available opportunity in expressing his disliking for my ways in singing these songs of horror, and yet, even though I've long stopped producing the content that drawn him to me, he still watches, still lurking outside my door, yearning to come into my life and be heard, with these fantasy expectations of wasting my time listening to him spew out his ramblings and hypocritical hissy fits, as if I don't know his true intentions with this pathetic crusade he has with me. How humans relish the dreams of seeing others ruined and poorly justify their crusade over something so trivial, where I've now developed dreams of my own. Dreams in seeing this avid fan being a subject with today's lesson while cosplaying in that ridiculous One Punch Man outfit. The perfect candidate in giving my class a demonstration of death by lethal gas. It was either that or showing my audience how to perform a lobotomy with a butter knife. Death by lethal gas, an honorable execution with its dishonorable reputation. A perfect way to go for an honorable crusader with a dishonorable agenda. I'll even play one of my videos while he makes his way to Slumberland. Predating back to World War I, when lethal gas was introduced into warfare in 1915 by the Germans, and how it made a huge impact, just enough influence to where everyone was killing each other with lethal gas. Even though it wasn't used in the battlefields in World War II, that didn't stop the Nazis from using it. But of course, knowing how this is YouTube with censorship and all, we'll just skip past this part of human history. Now, even though gas warfare was banned by international treaty, 6 states in America still used lethal gas as capital punishment. And knowing how gas was economical, the gas chamber had 2 chairs in it, which means I get to join the ride. and enjoy the thrilling effects alongside with my stalker. Hopefully my arms aren't strapped. I love having my hands up during the ride. Now, inside the gas chamber, you'll see a shallow pan filled with sulfuric acid and water. And the deadly gas is released once the cyanide pellets are dropped in. Now, once the process begins, there is no stopping it. The person or persons who are being executed is already dead. As with the case of Burton Abbott in 1957, when the governor called in 30 seconds too late. Now, once the process starts, what happens is the gas fumes will rise quickly, but death will not be fast or natural. Very soon, the victim will start wheezing and gasping like a fish out of water. Then they start to thrash, scream, cry, smashing their heads. Some even struggle so hard they would break free from the straps. Then once they begin to weaken, drained of all the fighting, their faces would turn purple, tongues sticking out, the drool seeping from their mouths. They said it's 10 minutes average before death. 8 to 18 minutes, actually. Well, if I had a stalker show up at my door, I think I can go for 20 minutes. Asphyxiation isn't that fast. Sure, some may find this as an inhumane way to go, distressing, but I assure you, my friends, the gas chamber is a humane method of punishment, since the Constitution wouldn't allow anything that is cruel or unusual. Good morning, class, or good afternoon, good evening, yeah, whatever. Well, I guess some of us are not happy with my methods of eradicating annoying humans. Sorry, folks, but it looks like hanging, firing squad, the electric chair, and the gas chamber are no longer available. Damn you, cancel culture. Today, my friends, I get to bore you with the wonderful world of lethal injection. So, be sure to grab yourself a pillow, lay down, and let your friend Mickey work his magic of taking you away to Slumberland. It's okay, my friends. I'm a professional technician. I got my license and lethal injection kit from Carl, that guy down the street who I get my drugs from. So according to these instructions, I gotta use what they call a Missouri protocol, written procedures that I gotta follow step by step. Now, even though you may feel me poking you several times with this injection needle, I wonder how many times I could stick you before your red nose starts buzzing. But don't worry, my friends. I assure you, everything I do is according to protocol. I check for everything in advance. I'm a professional. Did you know that you have to be checked by a doctor before I start sticking you? To see if there's a usable vein? If not, there's always the femoral artery. Oh, don't worry. I'm a doctor too. Gotta make sure you're healthy before ridding your filthy existence from this sick world. I guess I'm supposed to check the expiration date on these chemicals I'll be using. Also gotta check the machine I'll be using as well, just in case we end up operating during a blackout and a manual override. We don't want no malfunction ruining the automatic delivery system. Oh, I see you're curious about the tubes. Well, 3 of them hold drugs for the automatic system, and the other 3 tubes hold drugs for a manual delivery. So let's see, the procedure, in order. First, someone pushes the control panel in the next room. Then someone pulls the cable from the control panel from the wall that attaches it on the side. Then someone puts a clamp on the delivery tube. Also must make sure there's no air in the IV line. And don't worry if you're nervous, I'll be giving you a sedative. I'll make sure you're strapped down, all comfy and snuggly. You won't even feel a thing once I put in the IV and start the saline. And don't worry about making a shameful mess when your muscles start to relax. I have catheters for that. And I even made sure there's snacks, drinks, and enough 3D glasses for friends and family in the other room who'll be watching the show. So after your death warrant is read, the clamp from the drug delivery tube is removed. That's when 2 people will go into the control room and start the machine. Only one of the 2 switches will actually function. Much like the firing squad, nobody wants to go home feeling like it was them who sent you off to Slumberland. Me, however, I'll be pounding every switch just to watch you moan to the electric boogie with this awesome lethal injection kit. After you become unconscious, The procedure will only take about 5 minutes. Very clean, very painless. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how we do a lethal injection.